Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you for showing up. I see some of my friends are here, so hey, thank you for coming. My name is Francis Polycap. Founder of Agency of Poly. I've been part of the AG2, AG2, formerly known as Autogen community for about 2 years now, and I'm really excited today to share my journey with you. And so, as you can see from these GitHub repositories, I've been working with Autogen from its early days. My first aha moment came when I built a snake game using multiple agents. I had started the script, I basically put a few agents together, started the script, and and I joined a meeting, and then in that meeting, they like this pop window kept popping up, and you can actually see it in the screenshot here. And I keep closing it in the meeting because I was trying to show something, and I realized after I just kind of let the window pop up and stay that it was actually the snake game that I'd asked the Autogen agents to work on, because I'd let them run in the background because they were running into some issues, and they solved it and they launched the game. And that was the really like the first aha moment for me, where this was 2 years ago, when I realized that agents could collaborate together and be able to accomplish things without you having to watch them and supervise them, because they're able to supervise each other. And I think what Autogen does a really good job in, and what I'll highlight here is in this talk, is what I've found from working with businesses, where Autogen fits into the workflows that I've worked and built for different small businesses. So this is kind of the GitHub project that I'd shared 2 years ago, where it was the first time that I'd actually, this was before people got really into agents and all that. It was actually 2 weeks after Autogen had launched, where I found the library, and then I joined the community, and then I created this, and I just kind of open sourced it, and I guess people kind of found out about it the more that people found out about Autogen. And so my journey with AG2 evolved through several phases, from the early example scripts with 62 stars to developing PolyGPT. After I developed the Snake game, I really got into thinking about how can we use, agentic systems to automate business processes. And so after I'd done the Snake game, I kind of evolved that. I had created this to help the community get started with testing Autogen, because I was hanging out in Discord a lot, and people would come in, and they were excited about, hey, this is Autogen, this is awesome. What can we do? How can we get started? How can we play with it? And so I'd created this repository to just kind of share it with the community, to be able to give people easy Python scripts where they can just kind of like get used to it. And after that, I started then thinking, how can I use these agents to be able to automate business processes? And this was really actually the catalyzing moment, which kind of led me down my journey, where the industry hadn't quite gotten there. I didn't know enough about agents, agentic systems, how to properly build them. And so this project, I did stop working on it 2 years ago, because I just kind of ran into an issue where I didn't know enough about businesses. Yes, I have my own businesses. Yes, I wanted to automate processes in those businesses, but the problem was, at the time, I didn't know enough about how to integrate agents into business processes. And so really what I ended up doing was pausing this project. And Polly, on this side, on the right side of my screen here is a version of this open source project that's closed source, that I've been working on and off for about 2 years now, and I'll demo some parts to it. And so this conversation is really going to be about me balancing between the super technical aspects of being a developer, being an engineer who can build these automated systems, while also being a business owner who has to automate processes in my business. And so what in the early stages, and what I always run into, is people asking me, hey, I hear about these things called agents. How can I bring them into my business? How can I use these agents to automate various processes in my business to either drive down, operational costs, or increase operational output to deliver more value to customers? And so the goal of this is really not to get too technical. It's going to be technical a little bit, but also not be too abstract and only share ideas. Over the past 2 years, I've helped multiple businesses automate their processes, and it's out of that experience that I really want to share with the community, 2 years later, what I've learned, and where I think AG2 really exists in the services and the workflows I've built for different businesses, to help them automate and produce more value. So the first step here is really to kind of understand the automation challenge. And the automation challenge that most businesses face is here I'm going to focus a lot on social media content creation, and WhatsApp. But fundamentally, businesses face a problem in which they either don't have enough resources or they don't have the ability to scale, either because of the people in the business or because of limitations such as money, so cost constraints. And so what I realized was, even in my own businesses, how can I scale this to be a lot better? How can I scale this using agents to make it a lot better? And so the thing that I ended up kind of coming down to, and what I'll focus on, because I have built automations for various different types of businesses, so it's not just social media content, but what I'm going to focus on for this one is going to be a subset of all those automations that I built for different businesses, which is Instagram, social media, posting, content creation, but also WhatsApp conversations. And so the demands are overwhelming. Daily posting across multiple platforms, 24/7 WhatsApp conversation management, maintaining consistent brand voice, and measuring performance across fragmented channels really forces small businesses to be in a position where they're not able to scale, deliver more value, find more customers, and actually find out how they can be able to grow their business fundamentally, right? So the challenge has intensified as digital touchpoints continue to multiply, creating an unsustainable workload for traditional teams. And what worked for managing one or two channels, for example, Instagram and Facebook, breaks down entirely when you scale to 4 or 5 or more platforms. And the way that traditionally we have solved that is hiring more people. So what I see is businesses struggle with this exact problem. They know they need an omni-channel presence where they need to be on LinkedIn, Twitter, or X now, Reddit, Facebook, Instagram. And also, out of all those channels in which they're sharing their content, doing ads, there's a lot of people coming into their DMs and they're asking for their services, right? And typically, the systems that have been established are like ManyChat, and then having virtual assistants who interact with businesses through ManyChat. And what I found out is that this results into inconsistent messaging because, different people communicate differently. We can train people, but I think that, there's an aspect of this where the businesses who I've worked with have complained about inconsistent messaging, delayed response, and ultimately a diminished customer experience, because just out of the nature of the fact that it's a lot of volume and you're going to have some cracks in that system. And so, what I'm basically kind of explaining here is really the problem of a subset of workflows that deal with social media interactions and how to drive value to your business while having, let's say if you're running ads and you get a lot of people who are coming into your DMs, how do you have a consistent experience for all those people in terms of having 24/7 support for them to understand the value, to then convert them, qualify the leads, and then qualify the leads, and then transition the leads into being paying customers. And so what's our approach? Our approach begins with a structured discovery process focused on business goals rather than technical implementation. As I had initially mentioned, this talk is going to be really balancing those two. And I learned how to communicate this just out of talking to multiple business owners. I think at the beginning I started off by talking about the technology and being excited about that. But over time, it has become more about, hey, let's understand what your company is. So in our I'll demo some things here that I prepared for you, but it's really, we understand what is the company profile, what is the workspace in which we want these digital workers to work in, what is the portfolio of this company, what is the product, service, or project that they're working on, and how can we align the work that these digital workers do to KPIs and OKRs? Now, you'll notice that I'll use the word digital workers instead of agents, because I think the word agent has been overused. It has been almost beat to death. And I think it kind of misses the point of what agents really are about. Agents, in terms of the context of business, are about completing work. And so I define them as digital workers because I think that agents are very useful in being able to do work, but part of that work is we anchor those agents to KPIs and OKRs. So any business really cares about what is the KPI and what is the OKRs that helps our business grow, or what is stopping us from growing? What are the objectives that we have? For those who don't know what KPI and OKRs are, KPI stands for Key Performance Indicators. So these are indicators such as, how many people, how many channels are we really posting on, how many channels are we talking with customers on, and what is the conversion rate of that? OKR stands for Objective Key Results, and this really grounds business goals and business strategies in what are the objectives in this quarter, what are the key results that we want to measure. And so by building digital workers around the achievement of KPI, measuring digital workers through KPIs and focusing them on achieving objective key results for a business, it allows us to build digital workers that serve the business much rather than just being workers that exist to just, it's the difference between just using a technology versus using that technology properly to achieve specific business needs or specific goals. And so what we understood really at the early stage, what I understood over the past 2 years of just kind of going from working with multiple businesses is we have to first understand what that business is, create a workspace in which the workers will work in, define and establish what product, service, or project that business is working on, and then tie all that together by understanding what is the key performance indicator that this business cares about, or what is the objective key results that this business really wants to achieve. And when you speak and communicate with a business owner from that perspective, it becomes less about the technology and becomes more about how can I help you achieve what you need to achieve, right? And this framework really goes into understanding, all the business part and aspects, and having the workers and workflows work towards helping that business achieve its goal. Now, I will demo a bit about Poly here, but the goal of what I'm really trying to accomplish with this conversation is really not about Poly or about any specific business or workflow that I've built for different clients. The reason is because, some clients are not comfortable being able to be used as examples in this to say, hey, here's a client who is using automation to handle WhatsApp conversations with their customers. I think that and that's kind of why I shift the conversation from being agents and AI to being more digital workers, because virtual assistants from, let's say, countries like Philippines or Egypt, entrepreneurs are really used to the concept of virtual assistant. And we can think of a virtual assistant, a human virtual assistant, as a digital worker, right? They work online. There's digital nomads as a concept out there. And so I wanted to bridge the gap between those two concepts and just kind of create, specify and define more that agents are just digital workers. And so, we start off with kind of understanding the problem statement. Why am I on this call with this business owner? What does he want to achieve with his business? What are the goals that he has? What are the objectives that he has? What are the key objectives he has? What are the key performance indicators that he can use to measure his journey towards accomplishing that? Then I focus on establishing a system for that business owner that can help them achieve that. Then I find the digital worker who can be able to help them do the work that is needed to achieve those key results that they want. And then I define the roles of that, key performance indicators, and company profile, workspace, and portfolio. So this worker-centric model, helps us really define the worker to serve the company, much rather than just create a digital worker. And so I'm going to kind of scroll down here a little bit. And what I'm going to demo here is our platform and how this actually works in practice. And so I'm going to log in here through Facebook. This isn't a publicly accessible platform. You can see that it's also running through localhost, but I'm going to log in here with Facebook, and I hope it works. You know how demos go. And so what you'll see here is our dashboard. Our dashboard, you typically see the tasks that are being worked on here. This is still a work in progress, but in relations to what I just spoke about, I'm going to go up here into the company overview, and I'm going to show you one of the company profiles that we created. And I'll walk you through how we typically create a company profile. One of the reasons why I'm not going to focus a lot on demoing Poly is because it does take a bit for Poly to load all this information. And what I wanted to do is provide enough value without having to, have you wait for different pages to load. But what we typically do is take a link of any company, and we have deep research. So this is also an example of where AG2 really comes in, where we have multiple workers, multiple agents performing deep research for a company. And my philosophy is really that making it stupid simple either for myself or somebody, the user or the customer or the business owner to create a company profile, to understand after they've created that company profile that they can create a workspace. As I've kind of defined, a workspace is a place where work is done. So, in a typical workspace, we have files. When research is done, deep research, it goes into the workspace so that workers can continuously use that. And so once you have established a workspace, you actually then have to create a portfolio. And I'll show you guys a little bit about the workspace creation. I'm not gonna create a workspace right now, but the workspace is always created from the company. And so you can either create a workspace instantly here, or you can upload files, and then we can use those files to create a workspace. So that's two different ways to create a workspace. But a lot of this is, you can see my philosophy stems into not forcing people to have to, like, type in things, click in things, and all that kind of stuff. And once you've created a workspace, you can then create a portfolio inside of that. Now, you don't have to go through the process of, like, explaining what that portfolio is, explaining what that workspace is, what the digital workers that we've created using Autogen or AG2 really do. And this is kind of why it's powerful to have multiple agents as part of a digital worker, is that one of them will take the links that were provided for us by the company and all the information we researched about that company to understand what that company's goals are, and then understand how can we create a workspace that serves them. When you get into creating a product or service or project of a company within a workspace, it really becomes, okay, let's take this workspace, let's take the files in this workspace, and then let's create a digital worker. Let's create a project or a product or service. But the digital worker really, from the links, from the research, from the files uploaded into that workspace, understands what that is, and then creates the service, the product, or the project that company more or less has and represents. And so once you do have a portfolio, now we can actually get into the fun parts. And the reason why I built this and why I keep working on this for 2 years is because on the daily basis, I run into businesses that more or less are looking for the same workflows. The reason why this talk is focused on WhatsApp, Instagram, is because WhatsApp and Instagram is our workflows, just kind of social media in general, are workflows that I have a lot of businesses who need that, right? They're running ads, they get involved, they get in a ton of customers coming into their DMs. They don't want to scale it up by adding more people or create, more people to answer those DMs through ManyChat. ManyChat does offer the ability for you to add automation, so you can have agents in ManyChat who can answer questions. But once you have, let's say, one automation that is answering questions, then you want to add, let's say, okay, content creation, right? Can we create images and post infographics about what our service is? Now, you're going to have to go somewhere else and create that workflow. You can use N8N, you can use Make, but you can see why there's a need now for a workflow and for a system that can layer these workflows on top of each other. And that's why we actually establish the company profile first, then the workspace, because then we're adding, like, for example, I'll demo here, adding like a market research automation workflow to a company. So you can add multiple workflows to a company without having the complexities of, let's say, make.com or N8N having to have that drag and drop interface. By creating a foundation of what this company is, what this workspace is, you can, and then what the product is, and you're anchoring all that information on what is this company trying to achieve, what is their goals, what is their objectives. Each workflow you're adding to that company then serves achieving those KPIs, those OKRs. And so as this workflow loads, I'm going to kind of continue here because more or less what I was showing here was, the complete profile, the workspace, the workers, and different aspects of that. So the process of adding a workflow to a business is simply this simple, right? So, you have your company here, you'd be able to select different workspaces because a company can have multiple workspaces. I don't think I showed it here, but a company can have multiple workspaces. And so you can be able to, and a workspace can have multiple products. So think of an e-commerce store, think of a service business that has multiple services. So for each of those services, we can deploy workflows to each one of those. And once you add the workflow to that business, or to that business, to that workspace, to that product, project, or service. I'll just kind of say portfolio for now. Then you can actually configure it more if you want with you through the help of a digital worker. What typically happens in the background when you're adding this is we're taking that template workflow, and then we're looking at the workspace and the information and the research and the files, and then we create a version of that workflow that is meant to serve that business, that is meant to serve the KPIs and OKRs of that business. So we're taking a template workflow and specializing it and personalizing it to that business based on that business information. And that's why it was really important to establish the company, the business, the information that business, what that business cares about, what that business owner cares about, and then kind of driving that with achieving a lot of what those people care about, the business owners, such as myself and such as anybody on this call, to be able to help them achieve it through digital workers. And so we're going to get into some of the technical aspects here of how I have architected this system in case you wanted to kind of build a similar system, your own, and what would that look like, right? So a multi-agent system. Our approach leverages different frameworks for specific tasks. AG2 excels at facilitating natural, unstructured conversations between multiple agents, making it ideal for creative collaboration and content creation. Meanwhile, frameworks like ADK offer advantages for more structured workflows, creating a powerful hybrid solution that combines the best of both worlds. Now, for those who don't know what ADK is actually a framework that came out like a month ago or a month or so, where it's a Google framework of building agents. And for me, having worked with Autogen for quite some time, I found out that Autogen in our workflows, in our use cases, are really, having agents able to discuss, have conversations, and think about, hey, here's this KPI, here's this company, here's the workspace, here's the key performance indicators, here's the objective key results that we need to achieve, and here's the files and the research that we have. How can we achieve those things? How can we achieve those things together, right? And so the agents would have this discussion, which then that leads to better results. But when it comes to, for example, a WhatsApp receptionist digital worker, that we don't need to have multiple discussions for that. And so a streamlined approach that I found through experimentation, that Agent Development Kit really helps with just that conversation. But once the worker has had the conversation with a customer, the back end of it is actually a lot of that fulfillment is handled by AG2 workers, and AG2 workers who then collaborating, for example, looking through the knowledge graph, looking through the database, looking through, the different research and files that we have, and being able to kind of understand, hey, this is what this company is trying to do. This is what this customer is trying to achieve. Let's set up this agent to do the work that is needed for this customer to get done, right? Like, so let's say if it's a lead qualification system, the ADK agent would talk to the customer, gather as much information, and then help them, start getting on their process of moving into a qualified lead that then a human can be able to interact with. Now, instead of just having that conversation happen and then we call, let's say, an external API to a CRM tool like Salesforce, what we do actually is take that transcript of that conversation, pass it to AG2 agents, and then have them have a discussion about, hey, what was this customer really trying to do? What are they trying to achieve? And how can we present the human who will then, later on follow up with this customer? How can we present that human with as much information about this customer as possible? So, we do research about the customer. It really depends on the workflow and what the business and the client is really trying to achieve. But for the most part, what I'm going to explain here is typically how I handle these conversations with business owners, where I explain to them, hey, we have all these options, right? You have the option to, once the lead is qualified, we can have workers who will do research about that lead. We'll learn a little bit more about them from social media, from their online presence, so that when a human goes into talking to them to closing that deal, especially for high ticket customers, they have the most amount of information and they're the most knowledgeable about it. And once the AG2 workers have finished their analysis, their research, then they actually set up another task to create all that information into a CRM tool, to then provide a human in the loop where the human can go in there and actually look at what that conversation was about and follow up with the customer. So that was a little bit about AG2 and more or less kind of the system architecture. So I'll get into a specific use case here. And the two use cases that I prepared for you, and I am talking really fast, is because I want to show as much value as possible. For those who just joined, I have been in the Autogen community for 2 years. Even 2 years before that, I was an engineer, a software engineer. I did mobile, backend, front end. I do DevOps. I do almost the whole 9 yards. And so 2 years ago, I'd come into the Autogen community. I fell in love with Autogen, and as Autogen has grown, so has my understanding of how to use agents to help businesses achieve their goals. And so what this call is really about is what I've learned over these 2 years, building automations and building workflows for different businesses. And so I'm going to give you two use cases here, and then I'll probably open the floor here for us to be able to have, answer questions and kind of do different discussions such as those. So I will kind of talk about social media automation here. And so our social media automation creates platform-specific content while maintaining authentic brand voice. And so using AG2's multi-agent capabilities, we have built specialized workers that can analyze existing content, generate platform-appropriate posts, and maintain consistent messaging across channels while adapting to unique requirements of each platform. There's something I actually want to mention here. After using, let's say, I've tested, length graph, I've tested Llama index workflows, I haven't tested Crew AI quite a bit because more or less I enjoy Autogen. What I found out and what I love about Autogen or AG2, I use Autogen just because that's how, I've always thought about it. But what I really love about AG2 is how I can set up agent configurations and then have these agents collaborate and work and talk to each other and, towards a certain objective, right? So for each of these, where you kind of saw me list out analyze existing content, that's a specific agent that does that, right? Generate platform specific posts, that's a specific agent that would then suggest a content calendar, for example, right? And then we'd have specific agents for each of the channels that you want to be able to share that content through. So what this allows us to do is really strategize. Give me a second. So strategize in identifying topics that align with the business goals, research, gather information about it. Writers then create platform-specific content, and for each of these steps, it's different agents that do this. And the reason I like Autogen for this is that it's easy to set up for the clients I work with, right? Because you got to think about it. This platform that is on the right here, I've been working on this for 2 years. And I think, some of the people on the call, have heard me working on this for some time. So I build it on the part-time during weekends. But what I realized was that for each of the clients who I'm building their custom automations for, the challenge was how do I go from 0 to 1 really quickly? And what I mean by that is 0 automations for this client, or maybe they have like some, let's say N8N or Zapier or Make.com workflows that automate parts of their business. How do I build the infrastructure for them to have these workflows layered on top of each other to help them achieve their business goals? And so what I love AG2 for, it is the ease of use of setting that up from the ground up and having that consistency with that, right? And so for each of these, from 1 to 8, each of those are different digital workers. And it's much easier for me to just kind of set this up as a Python, run it as a cloud function that can then be able to feed into, let's say, N8N workflow. Let's say if they're running their automations through N8N, right? And so what it allows us, what this use case is here, it is to show that is to show the strengths of AG2, which is that having multiple agents who are able to work together consistently, the ease of use of us actually going from 0 to 1 for each of the customers who build, because the workflows and the clients that I typically focus on are high ticket customers, right? So I'm building custom automation solutions for them. So I'm not, just another, business that is offering, let's say, N8N workflows. For me, really, I think it's understanding each business as an individual and then catering to that individuality of that business and building them solutions that create an AI infrastructure that they can then layer multiple workflows on top of to gain this emergent property of having a bunch of workflows, a bunch of processes that help them achieve their KPIs, their objective key results, their, the key performance indicators that we use to then measure these agents on. And that I found that to be really powerful and a really good use case for us to be able to apply this. Now, for the marketing people who might be on the call, because the audience I was really targeting with this talk was both people who know about Autogen or AG2. They know about it, but they don't have the technical capabilities to implement this. And so kind of showing them how we go about it and how we go about almost starting, from scratch each time that we talk to business owners and building them something new, right? So it's typically, we gather that, if I'm meeting with a customer and we're talking about, hey, I need content creation automation, right? So what I typically do is gather, collect their brand guides, then I provide that, and I've kind of almost, turned this into a copy and paste kind of project thing, where we have a strategy agent who then more or less kind of understands the content themes either that they have or either that they want to have. Create a content calendar, that will come in here at the content agent creation and the research agent, and so the whole cycle here is really gathering information, understanding the information about that company, what their social media presence is, researching more strategies that we can do with that. Then we create content calendars, create the content. There's an agent who works on creating, let's say, if it's images. One of the things I'm really excited to start playing around with is Google's VO2. If you haven't used Google's VO, check it out. It's really good at creating videos. It's somewhat expensive, but it's that content creation aspect. Once we have a content calendar, is this an image? Is this an audio? Is this a podcast? Or is this going to be like a video reel or a short or a TikTok thing? And once you have an agent who creates and works with those tools, then you go into the quality control agent who reviews the content, who reviews the content calendar, the goals and all that. Then the distributing content, this is handled by by an API. Either you're setting up an MCP tool, or you're setting up an N8N workflow, or you're just directly talking to the API. So for example, on the right here, we directly talk to the Facebook API. We directly talk to the Facebook APIs to post that content, to create that content, to kind of ship that content. And so I think you kind of saw me add one of these workflows. Was it what? Yeah, anyways, let me just keep going. The reason also this talk is structured like this, it's not a slideshow, is because I can talk a lot. And I wanted to have the script in front of me with diagrams to help keep you focused. But on the other hand, I also wanted to show you a practical implementation that I am at liberty of showing you, because for the businesses I work with, as I've kind of mentioned, I might be repeating myself, but it's just in case people are dropping in and out of the call. I want to make sure that they're contextualizing what we're talking about. That some of the businesses I work with, most of the businesses I work with, didn't want to be part of this talk. They wanted to kind of see how this talk goes to understand whether they want to be publicly known as, hey, we're using AI to answer questions. Social media or the content that you're enjoying from us is created by agents, right? And so that's kind of why I'm showing you the platform that I've been working on, the platform that we have. This platform isn't released. You can actually see that I'm running it on localhost, but we will be releasing it at some point. But this talk isn't about the platform. It's really about, hey, I love Autogen, love AG2, been here for 2 years. I'd love to give value of how I've learned to take agents into production. And here's specific use cases. So the next use case is WhatsApp business automation. And I might be talking really fast just because I want to actually cover a lot of information here. So I wanted to kind of give you as much information. You can go back and rewatch this when it's posted in the community as a recorded video. So the next use case that I'm going to talk about AG2 in is our WhatsApp business automation workflow. So our WhatsApp business automation framework handles both text multimedia interactions while maintaining conversational context and integrating with business systems. This system transforms how businesses manage customer communication, reducing times from hours to minutes, ensuring consistent information and seamless connecting conversations to back-end processes. Now, this is a use case that it can actually be extended. It's not just about WhatsApp. This can be extended to Instagram DMs, Facebook Messenger DMs, LinkedIn DMs. So anywhere where you typically have people interacting with you to understand what your business offer is, either from ads you're running or just from having an account and posting content organically. as in the previous workflow that we, as the previous use case that we showed, where it was hosting content. This use case really focuses on how do we convert the people who are arriving in our DMs, right? And so I'm going to focus in here on WhatsApp as drilling down to the nitty gritty, but think about it as this can happen everywhere. Key thing that I always say, I never say a WhatsApp receptionist, Instagram receptionist, and you'll actually see that in the workflows in how I describe them in the workflow store. I describe them as receptionists. I never describe them as agents because I kind of feel like that dilutes, that kind of gets you into a logic trap in which people typically think of agents as not being useful or not, being valuable enough, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the typical workflow, the typical flow chart. All right, so it finally loaded. So here you can see we have Instagram receptionist. On the right here, you'll see Instagram receptionist, Messenger receptionist. I don't think I have a LinkedIn receptionist, but WhatsApp receptionist. I thought you said something. So I'll kind of finish off here and just kind of mention. So the WhatsApp flow is message comes in, then we have the LLM process it. What is the what is the purpose of this, right? Is it a product inquiry? If it is a simple, hey, how's it going? We don't need to go into this complex flow of retrieving the customer data, checking the inventory and all that. We can just provide a general response that is comprehensive. And so the whole idea is that for this complex query is where G2 excels and works in our system, where we have one agent who's retrieving customer data, we have another one who checks the inventory, we have another one who's looking at the pricing of each of those and seeing if we have deals or anything like that. And then it basically generates a response, maintains the conversation history, and then provides immediate responses. So while one of the agents is kind of having an interaction with the customer to understand it, we have a background process that runs with AG2 agents and workers that try to understand, do we as a business have the resources? Do we have everything in place to service this customer, right? And so here, our WhatsApp automation architecture, I might be kind of cruising through this just because I want to leave some questions at the end. This is how our architecture looks like. There's the human escalation path where, we want to bring a human into this in case we need to have the human review everything and then make sure that we got everything. Especially when it comes to interacting with customers, we do want to have that human in the loop just because, LLMs are fundamentally non-deterministic systems. And so having a human in the loop allows us to have the LLMs have an ability to call a human and say, hey, I actually need some help here. Can you hop into this chat? And so I'm not going to go through all of this because that'll take some time. But the last use case I really wanted to cover here is content repurposing. And we found out that AG2 really excels at this because this is also that creative aspect of having multiple agents, creating really quickly and easily multiple agents that can collaborate together to understanding, hey, we're getting, let's say we have content from YouTube. We can get that transcript from YouTube. Then how do we create content that can go into Instagram, LinkedIn, how do repurpose that, right? So this is a bit different from content creation because content creation is just kind of creating that content. But if we go into hey, I have a bunch of content, so these use cases are actually based on clients who I have. Hey, I have this content for Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, right? So let's say you have a YouTube channel. So we use a knowledge graph because the relationship between the content that you create and the ideas that you have, those concepts a lot cleaner and a lot better. And that's what we found works for our system and use cases that we have for our customers and clients. And so then we have platform-specific workers who will work within that knowledge graph after we've consumed all that content, the brand guide, the company information, all that stuff. We then actually have these AG2 workers who then kind of say, okay, hey, I'm going to create content calendar for Instagram. I'm going to create a content calendar for Twitter. I'm going to create a content calendar for LinkedIn based on this initial content that the user said, hey, or the customer said, or the business owner said, hey, I want to repurpose this, right? And so once they do all that, then, we get into this content distribution structure here where we use N8N or make.com, depends on what the client has, but we use the automation platform that they have or the automation platform they'd like us to set up to distribute that content. I am going to kind of cruise these next sections just because I want to give us some time at the end to ask questions. So this is more or less just another diagram showing exactly what I mentioned about how, we do a semantic analysis. This goes into a bit more detail about this process up here of how we break down that content. and repurpose it and then set it up on a posting schedule. So implementation and results. So our implementation approach focuses on rapid time to value because, time to value while ensuring quality and business alignment. What I learned early on over these 2 years is that business owners want to see results as soon as possible. And especially if they're excited about agents, you want to start showing them, hey, the results that we're able to give you, as we talked about in the call, is this, and here's in the first like week or 2 weeks, here's what we've created for you to be able to get those results and achieve those objectives that you have. And so, typically client onboarding takes between 2 to 3 weeks from initial consultation to deployment, and the results speak for themselves, right? And so part of it is that, not only do I have these calls, I found that AG2 is really good at being able to prototype really quickly and build these systems for the different types of businesses that I come across. Now, there is similarities between all of them. It is why we have a workflow store on the right side of the screen here for those who are watching my screen. There's similarities in workflows that businesses need, but there's a personalization of those similar workflows that all businesses need to what that business goals are. Because not all business goals are the same. Not all business goals are in the same position. So, typically we start off with a discovery call. In that discovery call, I'll ask a huge number of questions about KPIs, OKRs, business goals. How do you make your money? What's the bottleneck? How do you, what's your timeline? When do you want to actually kind of have these things done? What's your budget? Confirmation phase, so we tailor. Then we start creating digital workers who can match what that business needs are. Then there's the testing phase, the launch phase, and the collaboration with, either the clients and the client teams that are part of them. At the core of it, the reason why this talk balances a lot of me showing you, hey, here's the architecture, here's the structure, here's how we're thinking about it. Fundamentally, what I've come to learn over the past 2 years, going from up here where I was like, oh, hey, so it's this open source project here where I wanted to automate business operations. What I've learned over these 2 years is that really it matters about the business impact. I think as an engineer, my first reaction is the technology is to get excited about, you should know about Autogen, you should know about VO2. But really, for a business owner, he cares about bottom line objectives, like how can we make more money, reduce costs. So it really becomes about ROI, engagement rates, response times. Like there's specific KPIs you must communicate through to not only have the business owner understand how this workflow will help their business, but also to be able to convert them and actually get them to start working with you. I haven't mentioned much about what the platform is. I barely mentioned what this platform is. That wasn't the point of this talk. This is more of like a fan letter to the community, a fanfare to Autogen for not only existing. It is more of a thank you for me to just kind of say, hey, over the past 2 years, I wouldn't have made as much progress, as much money, as much as all that I've been able to do, if it wasn't for Autogen. Because if I go back up here, actually, I just started off like I had been an engineer for a while. I've been building mobile apps. I've been building web apps. I've been building apps for different businesses. But it was really at this point, which was, I think, a canon event for me, where I experienced the beauty, the capabilities, the ability for agents to be able to help businesses. At the beginning, it wasn't really about businesses. It was just about like, how can I use this to help my business? But then eventually, I kind of realized that, okay, there's an opportunity here to take my technical skills and couple it with this new technology to help small businesses be able to achieve things. Because I think enterprise businesses, as much as that we can make a lot more money with them, I think small businesses, I'm catering to those, especially if they're in between, like, let's say $100,000 a month to, let's say, $500,000 or $1 million a year. Those are really good business clients there because they do have the money to be able to spend on this, and they're still small enough that you're able to learn, deploy, experiment, and work with them to improve their processes. So this is more of a fanfare. I didn't really talk much about our platform, because I wanted to kind of thank Autogen, the Autogen team, the Autogen community, and just kind of show people in the Autogen community that, hey, here's how this guy who does have a technical background, who has done various different things, went from not really working with agents to working with agents and helping businesses use agents in specific workflows, using specific philosophies to help those businesses find value, derive more value to their customers, reduce their costs, and actually achieve some of their business goals. So I could read a little bit about this while, but I think I have 5 minutes here. So I want to kind of open the floor for some questions for anybody who has anything they'd like me to clarify on, build on top of, or go into more in depth with.
Thank you. Thank you, Princeps, and thank you for the incredible talk. And I learned a lot from your talk, and it's very interesting and very impressive. Yeah, anyone has some questions, you can directly unmute yourself and ask the speaker. Okay, Princeps, I have one question. I'm wondering that when you design this demo, these workflows, and have you ever do you think that the vision language models would take some effect in your use cases? I'm recently working on vision language models, and I want to find out some use cases that really needs need vision language models. Yeah. Just
Yeah.
so yeah, go ahead.
So, like the workflows, the way I've been designing them is actually I don't usually use like a visual editor like N8N or Make.com or anything like that. The reason why is, as much as I have been using those, is I found that there's a limiting aspect to it in which it limits my creativity, and also for if you want to release it as a platform or as a product or even just for yourself in the future, I found that a feature I actually didn't show is at the bottom here of the screen. You'll see that I have these like play button. I have a play button, and then I have like this share my screen. So this actually connects me to Google, to Gemini, and it actually like does live mode where I can share my screen and have it see what I'm doing, because it's a multimodal model that can take in video, and so I can share my screen of like me going into like any website and saying, hey, let's take this company. I just had a call with this guy. Let's take that company. Can you do some research about this? And so it removed me away from like going into N8N directly and then having to design it like that, because I think the future is really using voice, using visual capabilities as you're actually kind of building into it, and actually talking and interacting with it without having even to use my hands. So I have built a system here that allows me to just talk about what I want to achieve. I show the agent what I want to achieve, and then the agent is able to actually work with me. And the thing that I actually like about Make and N8N is that their workflows are typically JSON. So I can go directly from just having a call, having the transcript, sharing my video stream, and then have the agent write the JSON of that workflow in real time without me even having to touch my keyboard and just using my voice. So that's a really good question actually that you just asked.
Got it. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, it makes sense to me. Yeah, makes sense. Any more questions from?
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Princeps, thanks a lot for the super interesting talk. Can you quickly just see the difference between MCP, your AG2, and you also mentioned what's the other one?
ADK.
A different framework. Just yes, the ADK. Because the ADK and especially Google also just recently released the agent to agent kind of connector, which again is different. And just to get a clear mental map on those tools that you're using. Super interesting what you're doing.
Right. So I would categorize actually. Let me scroll down here a little bit to give you like a visual as I kind of mentioned this. So here, when we're talking about AG2 and ADK, like also even like I'll talk about ADK and AG2 here. They are frameworks which allow us to create agents, right? And then after you've created the agents, the A2A is a framework in which we can then take all those agents and have more or less a marketplace for those agents. But where MCP comes into that is once you have the agents either through AG2, ADK, or even in the A2A, you have basically this store where you have all these agents. You can then give them access to tools to connect to multiple platforms. So you'll hear me talk about N8N, you'll hear me talk about Make, But a third option actually is setting up MCP servers and connecting those agents to the platforms that you want to work. So a good example, if I'm still sharing my screen here, is this Instagram integration is not a MCP, but it could be, right? It could be an MCP. And I've kind of considered turning this into an MCP where it's just a service that runs on a cloud function somewhere, and the agents can then connect to it and then talk to Instagram directly to get the content posts, to post something, to post a comment, to post a story. So that's why that's the difference between agentic frameworks such as ADK, AG2, A2A, and the difference between MCP, N8N, Zapier, Make. I would categorize those in the same vein as MCP because they're just connecting agents to platforms, to applications that you want the agents to do things in.
Super. Thanks a lot. Second question, if I may, would be related to your store that you have, the workflow store. Currently, you're focusing exclusively on the kind of communication aspect, right? But I would also imagine, let's say, for customer service, you could have a similar thing where you have a series of workflows that you could even cater maybe to different industry verticals and then offer them so that, like you said, you can offer to a client this 0 to 1 in, let's say, 2 to 3 weeks, because you don't have to reinvent the wheels all the time. A, do you think that's or would you agree with that? And two, what made you pick this marketing or communication focus rather than any of the other processes where agents could be super helpful going forward?
So those are really two very good questions. One is really like when I kind of think about my current focus as a business right now, it is actually less on the platform and the store. This is why it's actually running on localhost, and the reason why it makes sense for me is because I make more money from selling custom AI solutions, but then I realize that I say no to a lot of clients who may not be in the budget range, may not actually have the money to pay for the custom solutions. And so that's kind of why I've been in the background building the workflow store, because I noticed that, okay, I'm running into people, for small businesses who are, not making, let's say, $50,000 or $100,000 a month. What I realized is that they're still asking me for workflows. And a lot of the workflows that they really need to solve to make more money to be able to afford my custom services is they don't have enough customers. And so the reason why I focus on communication is that business has to talk to their customer. They have to go out there, post more content, right? So that's why the use cases I picked actually started off with content posting, content repurposing. And then once you're posting content and you're getting people to talk to you in your DMs, then you start converting them using DM receptionists. Then you actually have more money to come back to me and say, hey, I have a bunch of people who are, asking for my services. Here's the bottleneck I noticed about my business. Now that you actually have people who are interacting with your social media accounts, who are coming into your DMs, and then those people in your DMs are giving you money because you're converting them, because you have a DM receptionist who's setting up a CRM tool, who's setting up meetings for you to go on a call. Now we can actually talk about, okay, let's expand that to various things. Now, the second question was about verticals. The reason why this is vertical agnostic is so that any type of small business who I typically work with who I haven't worked with, they're in different industries, right? So one of them is, let's say, in farming. Another one is, let's say, in like solar panels or e-commerce. And so I didn't want to pigeonhole myself into a specific niche. But secondly, it's strategic actually, because what I realized, I'm in a school community, for example, right? And in some communities, there's people who want to offer AI automation agencies, right? And they want to offer AI automation services. And so what this allows them to do is take our platform whenever I release it and specialize it to that specific vertical, to focus and say, hey, I only cater to plumbing businesses. We offer social media, content creation, content repurposing, and DM receptionists for plumbing businesses, and we help you go from not having content posting consistently to content posting consistently to then interacting with people in your DMs consistently. And so it allows other businesses to build on the platform, which makes it a platform rather than me saying initially, because it make more sense for me to focus on a niche. But since I'm making money from selling custom solutions, I can just kind of take a step back and say, okay, let's think about who's the target for this. A is for either business owners, entrepreneurs, or small, or entrepreneurs who want to start AI automation agencies, and they can resell these services. It does multiple things for me because it allows me not to have to go do selling the platform. The people who want to build these AI agencies, some of them in the Autogen community, they don't know how to build all these custom solutions, but they want easy. They don't even want to go into N8N or Zapier or Make and drag
Oh,
and
exactly.
drop. Mhm.
But that's why, when we look at that, and when you also look at your workflow store, my intuition would be that's the big business, right? In a sense,
Mhm.
if you can cover different verticals and then make this a self-service store, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that these workflows, they are for the plumber, and these workflows are for the dentist, for the dental hygienist. I don't know.
Yeah.
You have different. They have differences, and my second question here then would be: do you run these workflows for them, or do you offer it for them so that they can run it on their infrastructure? That would also be
That's a very good
a
question.
different approach, right?
Yeah.
Because you could even say, well, you're a little bit like a snowflake, because you do some arbitrage on where you run it, and you charge them a fee for running their workflow, and you kind of pick and choose. Do you run it on your own server farm, or do you run it on AWS, wherever?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. You see, what this is actually connected to is our N8N self-hosted instance, right? Now, N8N has a license agreement and that's probably why I haven't launched this, where they want you to pay 50K, I think, to use like their N8N, self-hosted version for multiple businesses and multiple accounts. But so what I offer is saying, hey, we'll build these workflows for you. We can help you set your own N8N instance, but we can also give you the JSON of that workflow so that you can take it to your N8N, to your Zapier, to your Make.com, and deploy it there yourself. And so that's kind of where that last bit of the last mile problem of how do I deploy this workflow? How do I get it to work? Because we can then just connect to the API tokens that you have for those workflows, in N8N, in Make.com, and then you can just use our platform as a centralizing hub with, I hope the design is good enough for people to come in and not have to worry about like nodes and everything like that. They can just talk to the system. It will fix the workflow, it will repost it, and then it will let them know. That was a really good question, actually.
But you still think you will need some tinkering of the customer, and you cannot offer this. Basically, you offer the workflow store, and then it's a web-hosted platform where the customer connects several agents and says, okay, this is what I want to have, and they don't have to deal with an N8N or Zapier, because in the end, you don't want, as a business owner, you don't want to continue to rely on N8N and Zapier because they're expensive. Zapier,
Yeah.
right?
And
you could, as a platform, so to speak.
I'll give you actually the way we solve that. You kind of side actually, and you actually asked the question, which is the solution to what you're saying. You see what N8N, Zapier, Make.com are. They are just collections of functions that are calling these third-party APIs. And with the invention of MCP, it now establishes, do I want to pay N8N $50,000 for me to create these workflows for my customers, or can I just have an agent who can create and deploy MCP tools on our cloud functions, which reduces my costs. I don't have to pay $50,000 to have this agent create these MCP tools. And so actually the way I solve that is that I'm working on creating an agent using AG2 who is a team of agents who work on creating an MCP tool, deploying an MCP tool. They don't even have to create it. They just go to GitHub, pull that repo, deploy to a cloud function on like AWS or Azure or Google Cloud, and then we just directly connect to that, and that keeps everything in-house, and it removes N8N, it removes Zapier, it removes those. I only leave that as an option if the customer already has N8N or Zapier, and right now I haven't built that yet, the MCP tool, so it kind of allows them to be able to use what they have, but I can upsell them and say, hey, you can cut your costs here by not having to pay Zapier because that's expensive. For each time you're running a workflow, you're paying X amount of dollars. How about you just kind of have us host that and work with that, and then you can be able to kind of not have to worry about that because then we can just deploy them easily.
Super. Thanks. Sorry, I didn't want to take up so much time.
No, it's okay. I don't know if anyone has questions, but if you have more questions, or I can definitely answer a lot of these because it's taken 2 years to kind of really figure out how to either go to market, how like I started off with automating business processes, but how to communicate that, right? Because as an engineer, I started off with like, oh, this is an amazing tool, and and then they're like, but how does that help my business though? And then I started thinking, okay, KPIs, OKRs, okay, let's communicate from that. And I found more conversion when I spoke from that perspective because business owners understand, oh, so I can make more money or I can have more customers engaged in their DMs. Oh, okay. And for each of those DMs, you don't have to answer the spammy DMs who are saying, oh, hey, come to my profile for 10% off or something like that, right? You want genuine responses to genuine customers. And so, that's kind of where that really fits in.
Super interesting.
Okay.
You're going to be the first unicorn then, right? The one-person unicorn, I understand.
yeah, that's the goal. I'm working towards it.
Sorry to interrupt. I have a conflict meeting.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Yeah, we have reached the time limit, and thank you everyone. I will share the recording with the community later. And sorry, I have a conflict meeting.
No, it's okay. Maybe we'll do another meeting, another event like this one in the future once I've launched everything.
Yeah, thank you everyone. And the Princeps is also in our communities. Just if you have a question, feel free to ask. Yeah, thank you everyone. Bye.
For sure. Thank you.
Thanks for organizing.
Yeah.
Bye. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Bye.
I gotta end this.